welcome to the CNN-IBN special Leader Talk, where we talk leadership mantras with successful leaders from the world of corporate India and from sports persons, all of whom have been legends in their lifetime. Joining me today are two such legends, N.R. Narayana Murthy, Executive Chairman and Co-Founder of Infosys, and Prakash Padukone, arguably the greatest badminton player the country has produced. And both of them have much more in common than you'd believe. They're both proud Bangaloreans, Kannadigas and Indian citizens. Thank you very much for joining us on Leader Talk. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Murthy. What does leadership mean for you? When you define leadership, what are those 3 or 4 qualities that you're looking for?
Sure. You know, before I go on to it, let me say that it's a privilege to share the platform with you and Prakash. Prakash is a unique person in the sense that he brought so much of joy to my generation when he won the Masters in 1980, and his daughter has brought so much of pride to Bangalore by succeeding in a true and tough meritocracy like Bollywood and bringing joy to perhaps 1 billion Indians. You asked me about the attributes of leadership. Leadership is all about transformational change, which is big ticket change, which is about paradigm change. Therefore, the first requirement or first attribute of a leader is courage. Courage to take tough decisions, courage to go against the vast majority of naysayers, courage to do the unconventional stuff, courage to make huge sacrifice, all of that. The second, I think you need character, because character is what will stand by you in the hour of that tough decision, because you are lonely, you have nobody to look up to. Therefore, you need character to do the right thing, character to say that I will give up this huge opportunity because I believe in my values. Third, a leader has to be a generous person, because people will have to feel an inch taller in his or her presence. By being a generous person, he is able to form a team that will give its life for the mission that the leader has taken up.
So it's what you're saying then, Mr. Murthy, is leadership is about we and not about I.
It's more about we, more about us than I or me. I agree with you. Absolutely.
You know, in that sense, there were two points that Mr. Murthy raised, courage and character. You showed that amply on a badminton court. In a sport where, yes, we had Nandu Natekar in a previous generation, but we hadn't produced a world champion till you did it. And you took some very courageous decisions to become a world champion. You went, for example, and trained in Denmark, presumably in the cold of a European winter. So it must have been tough and lonely at times. How did you manage to overcome that sense of loneliness? Because you were a trendsetter.
I entirely agree with you. I think to reach the top, at the world level in any field, I think you need to take some risks. You need to be courageous and take some decisions. Sometimes it might work, sometimes it may not work, but you have to take decisions. And so one of the 2 decisions, in fact, which I took a big risk was one, I went to Indonesia in 1976 and went and trained with their national team, because I was the national champion for 6 years but was not doing anything internationally. So I went and trained with them for 6 weeks with the national team. And that, I think, turned out to be because I learned so much from that experience. As soon as I came back, I made a mark at the international level and was able to continue there. The second was my shift to Denmark. Nobody had done that, especially in badminton. I took a big risk. In fact, my parents were very much against, because I won the Commonwealth Games in '78 and then All England in 1980. And I got 2 promotions. I was with a public sector bank. I was very highly placed. And I was offered a 1-year contract when I went to Denmark. So my parents were so worried, because coming from a middle class, you got such a good job, maybe you can become the MD of the bank. I was the youngest officer. You're going with 1 year. What will you do after you come back? But I said, but this is a risk which I have to take to to further my badminton.
That's interesting, because risk taking, traditionally it was felt that middle class families, and both of you really come in a sense represent our proud symbols of what middle class India can achieve. Middle class families are generally risk averse. So, what is it that made you, Mr. Murthy, for example, decide that, I'm going to set up my own company, because you had setbacks when you first started off. I mean, it wasn't a smooth ride as many believe. You set up a company in the 70s called Softronics, which you had to eventually close down. What is it? Was there one thing that drove you to take those risks, given the fact that you came from middle class family backgrounds where generally people didn't take these risks?
Well, my stay in Europe, in France, my travel through Europe, at least a couple of incidents that had a telling impact on my thinking were the ones that said, I want to go back to India and try my hand at becoming an entrepreneur. The first time, as you pointed out, Softronics was a failure, because pretty quickly, within a matter of 6 to 9 months, I realized that India was not yet ready for software, because at that point in time I was depending purely on the domestic market. So I quickly closed it in a year, and then I said, look, I'm going to look at an opportunity to explore the international market. And that's where I came across a set of extraordinary youngsters who are all 10, 11 years younger than me, when we were all working at PCS. And I said, look, these are great guys, and if I don't succeed with all these people around me, then I don't know when I would do that. Second, that was the time when 4 extraordinary events happened in the world. First one was the availability of super mini computers. Second was unbundling of software from hardware. Third was availability of industrial strength online transaction processing units on super mini computers, which meant that mid-sized corporations could also go into huge computerization. And finally, availability of talent in India. So I said, if I don't take advantage of these events at this point in time, I will never be able to do that.
But you had to take a few bumps. Leaders have to be ready to deal with adversity before they are able to achieve success, in a sense. Because Prakash, for example, in your time, the Indonesians were the kings of the game, and I think it took you some time to beat the great Hartonos and the Liam Swee Kings and the great Danes like Hansen. So you obviously must have felt at some time that to reach their level, you had to raise your bar by a huge amount. So as someone who eventually became a world champion, there must have been tough, dark moments as well.
No, quite a few, in fact. Like I mentioned, I was a national champion for almost 6 or 7 years, but not doing well internationally. I was doing everything I knew. Like in those days, nobody knew much about physical training in India, and physical fitness was a very key aspect of badminton. So it was only when I went to Indonesia, I learned, how much they had advanced. So the moment I got to know, what physical training actually was, I imbibed that in my game, and I think I consider that as the turning point. And also, I took only the good points from their system and did not change my game entirely. Did not emulate and try to play exactly like them. Then I don't think I would have succeeded. So I had to come up with a plan of my own, a game style of my own, which was very different from everybody else in the world. And
but where did that self-belief come from? Where did that self-belief? There must be a lot of self-belief that you can actually do it, because as you said, you were national champion, you were winning everything in India, but to take that next step, there must have been a lot of self-belief. Somewhere you must have thought that you can do it.
I think also again, when I was in Indonesia, when I first went, I couldn't take more than 3 or 5 points from them. But toward the end of the camp in 6 weeks, I had started beating them. That's when, it gave me the belief. And also it's been a lot of trial and error, because there were no video, there were no computer, there were no TV, there was no books to read, and, I didn't have a coach. So I would watch players, play, and then, try to analyze. Maybe I had that gift of, analyzing the players better. Would come back and try to whatever, something which I liked, some strokes which I liked, would try to incorporate in my game, and came up with a lot of, if it worked, I would continue. If it didn't work, I would, again wait for the next opportunity.
You mentioned at the outset, Mr. Murthy, character, critical to be a leader. Now, when you say character, am I to understand it is a certain moral integrity above all else? Because, you know, we've also seen people become leaders over the years, or believe, or the outside world believes they've become leaders by taking shortcuts. Do you believe there are shortcuts that you can take, or there is basically, you cannot, there are certain basic principles you cannot compromise on if you truly want to inspire others?
Yeah, you know, I often tell our youngsters that, look, if you want to build a company of maybe 1,000 crores, you can take shortcuts. But if you want to build a company of 100,000 crores and sustain it over 100 years, 200 years, you can't take shortcuts. No way.
So it's about institution building. Well, you know, you're saying for it to be an institution builder, as opposed to, let's say, being a fly-by-night operator, you need to have a certain core integrity and a core value system.
Absolutely.
And you've got to impart it, presumably as a leader, to the rest of your team. How big of a challenge was that? Because you may have your own personal code of values. How do you impart it to others?
An important responsibility of a leader is to create people who are in some sense better than him or her. And the best way of imparting lessons, imparting values, imparting ideas is leadership through example. That's why I believe that Mahatma Gandhi was the finest leader that we had in the country. You know, Sarojini Naidu used to make fun of him, saying that it takes a fortune to keep this man in poverty, because that man insisted on traveling by third class, a lot of security and all of that. So therefore...
Is that what you did? I mean, I know you've told me earlier that you come to office at 6:45 a.m. in the morning. Is that to inspire others?
If you came earlier than your younger colleagues, then I can tell you it may take 1 month, 2 months, then they will say, if this old man can come and do all of this, we too can do it.
Let me take a break at this point, Prakash. Mr. Murthy, much more to talk to both of you, particularly how do you impart these values to the next generation? That's on Leader Talk after a short break. You're watching Leader Talk on CNN-IBN. Welcome back once again to Leader Talk, where we are talking to two true leaders, Narayana Murthy, Executive Chairman and Founder of Infosys, and Prakash Padukone, former All England badminton champion. You know, I want to raise the issue in this segment of the generation next. How do you impart leadership values to the next generation? Because we are a very young country. There is a badminton revolution in a sense, Prakash, going on in India. We've seen what Saina Nehwal has done. Others are emerging. How do you ensure a certain value system is, or a certain success mantra is imparted to the next generation? You've started an academy. What do you tell the young?
Well, what we've tried to do in the academy is, I went through a lot of hardships. There were hardly any facilities. So we've tried to make sure that the present generation, though, the trainees of our academy they don't go through the same kind of hardships. Basically, people who graduate from the academy, they cannot complain that I didn't have lack of facilities. If they don't make it to the highest level, it cannot definitely be due to, lack of facilities. So, we made sure of that. So we need more, academies like this, considering the kind of, the size of our country and the kind of talent we have. 1 or 2 academies like this are not enough. We need more academies like in almost every zone to start with, or maybe, every state, with committed coaches and committed players. Okay, so
you are trying to create that kind of culture around badminton which would sort of promote excellence. How do you do that? Today in a place like Infosys, lots of young people come in with lots of dreams. How do you keep them focused to live their dreams? Because there is a lot of attrition also. People want to move on and do more and more in their lives.
Well, the biggest challenge any corporation faces in India is the institutionalization of aspirations, values and competencies. So in order to ensure that this company can produce sufficient number of next generation leaders, we started the Infosys Leadership Institute in 2000. Infosys Leadership Institute is built on three fundamental tenets. One, our company is our campus. Second, our business is our curriculum. And third, our leaders are our teachers. Why do we say our company is our campus? Because a campus, as you know, is a place where there are lots of exchange of ideas, where there is meritocracy, there is discussion and debate, and finally the best idea comes to the table and then that is carried through. Second, unless a person fully understands the innards of our business, he or she won't be able to become a leader. Third, we felt that the best way we can teach our future leaders is to bring people who have credibility, people who have competencies, people who have demonstrated their worth in tough situations in an environment that these youngsters can relate to. So therefore we said we will ensure that all the courses are taught by our own leaders.
You know, I'm going to ask both of you in conclusion, role models. Did you, do you have a role model, or did you have a role model in all those years of growing up and becoming a badminton champion? Someone whom you consciously emulated?
Well, during my playing days, I don't think I had anybody outside the sporting world. Rudy Hartono was the 8 times All England champion and the best badminton player probably the world has ever seen. He's been my idol and a role model. Bjorn Borg was a role model for me. But subsequently, once I finished my playing career, I think Mr. Murthy has been a big, Infosys, and I always keep telling him, anytime he comes on TV or he gives an interview, I make it a point to read it 3 or 4 times, and I've tried to inculcate and try to emulate him to a very small extent compared to what he has achieved. I have not achieved anything, but I think he's definitely my role model.
He's achieved a hell of a lot also. So Mr. Murthy, yeah, so I think Prakash is being extremely modest, because I think there's something in the air about Bangalore and Karnataka that makes all of you extremely modest. What is it? Is there something about the air in Bangalore that makes, I found this, whether it's Rahul Dravid in cricket, and Anil Kumble, Narayana Murthy, Prakash Padukone, what is it about the air of Bangalore that makes you so humble and rooted even when you become leaders? Is there a secret mantra there as well?
No, I think by and large we are all from middle class background. Middle class background is very strong in father and mother saying, don't let it go to your head, you have a lot to achieve. Yes, you've got 95 marks out of 100, but what happened to the other 5? I think that is the important thing.
So what you're saying is important. In a sense, you're saying you've got to be ambitious,
yes,
but you've also got to be rooted.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that something that you would offer as a tip to younger people who want to sort of become leaders in the future? That yes, live your dream, but while you live your dream, stay humble.
Yeah, I think unless you have humility, then you don't learn. You don't aspire to become better. Because if you are humble, then you recognize people who are better than you. You want to learn from them, and therefore there is an opportunity for you to become better and better and better. So true humility is what is demonstrated when you are seen as being at the top.
And also live in Bangalore. I think there's
that's a good one.
I think there's something about humility in Bangalore that
must be the weather.
It's the weather. The weather makes you rooted and humble. But Prakash Padukone, Narayana Murthy, both of you have been legends in your lifetime. Thank you for sharing some of your leadership mantras with us today. Thank you very much. That was Leader Talk. We'll have many more episodes where we will get together people from the world of corporate India as well as sports persons to share their leadership mantras. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.